Sophia stood quietly behind the coat rack near the grand entrance of the city's most prestigious art gallery. The midnight unveiling of the rare modernist collection was underway, and the room buzzed with anticipation. She wore the simple black uniform of the gallery's coat attendants, a stark contrast to the sharp tuxedos and glittering gowns that swirled around her. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, no jewelry to catch the light. She moved with polite efficiency, hanging coats and scarves, avoiding eye contact with the socialites and millionaires who hardly noticed her existence. The air was thick with expensive perfume mingling with faint traces of turpentine from the paintings, and the polished marble floors reflected the low golden lights. Guests hovered in clusters, their conversations bubbling about the captivating lines of the artworks and heated bidding wars on the horizon. Sophia kept her head down, listening but not responding. Her soft accent from a distant countryside made swift judgments about her, especially from a sharp-eyed man in a tailored suit. "That coat girl," he whispered to his companion with a sneer. "I doubt she even understands what's going on here. Pretty sure she's just here to keep the place clean or something." The companion chuckled dryly without looking over. Sophia's cheeks flushed, but she didn't react, continuing her work with calm resolve. The night was a turning moment for this world she moved quietly within but rarely touched. Suddenly, a sharp gasp interrupted the murmur of the crowd. At the front row, a middle-aged man collapsed, his face pale and glistening with sweat. Guests froze, the festive mood shifting instantly into stunned silence. The man's breaths were shallow. The elegant hall, filled with important collectors and art lovers, held its breath, waiting for someone to act. A heavy hush fell over the grand gallery as the man lay slumped in his chair, his body rigid and face drained of color. Eyes widened and alarm rippled through the crowd. Some guests whispered anxiously about calling for medical help, others merely stared, uncertain how to respond in the midst of such elite surroundings. Yet, despite the urgency, no one stepped forward. The bubbling auction chatter abruptly ceased, replaced by a tense buzz of hesitation. Sophia, still near the coat rack, instinctively scanned the gathering crowd. She caught the flustered gaze of the event coordinator, a young woman nervously clutching her clipboard, her forehead slick with sweat beneath the gallery's elegant but stifling lighting. Security guards stood awkwardly by the doors, uncertain whether to intervene and risk disrupting the evening's decorum. The weight of paralysis hung over the room like thick fog. Without a moment's hesitation, Sophia pushed through the pockets of frozen guests. Her soft shoes clicked quietly but purposefully against the marble floor as she approached the fallen man. Murmurs rose around her, a mixture of disbelief and thinly veiled annoyance. You could see it in the sharp glances. Who is she to step up? It's just a fainting spell. Let the professionals handle this. Sophia ignored the murmurs, bending down beside the man. She recognized the danger immediately. Heatstroke in a crowded, overheated gallery was no uncommon danger, but critical if untreated. Swiftly, she pressed the man's wrist, finding a weak but rapid pulse. His breathing was shallow, labored, and he felt clammy to the touch. "Everyone back," she said firmly, voice steady. "Give him space." Her tone held no room for argument. A few onlookers hesitated, then slowly stepped aside, creating a small clearing. Sasha, a young woman standing nearby, looked surprised but obeyed, moving her group of friends out of the way. "I'm calling security," one man muttered, fumbling for his phone, but Sophia waved him off. "No need to wait," she said. "Sasha, grab a bottle of water from the bar and bring me a cloth." The room watched, stunned, as Sophia took control. She instructed two tall men to help gently tilt the man's head back and lift his legs slightly off the ground by supporting his calves with their hands. She explained calmly to the crowd, elevating the legs helps encourage blood flow to the brain. Her voice was clear, calming, cutting through the rising anxiety. As Sasha returned with water and a damp cloth, Sophia wiped the man's perspiring forehead, the cool cloth soothing against his skin. "Keep fanning him," she ordered a seated woman who was holding a program booklet. Before the woman could protest, Sophia added, "It's important to regulate his temperature." More guests murmured among themselves, some incredulous, others beginning to exchange glances that carried a hesitant respect. Disbelief spread. This modest code attendant who had until now been so inconspicuous was suddenly directing relief efforts with authority and grace. Security finally moved forward, gaining some control over the crowd. One guard reached for his radio, calling for emergency medical services. Sophia gave a nod of appreciation but kept her focus trained on the patient. "The symptoms match heatstroke," she explained quietly to the guard who leaned in. "He needs rapid cooling and medical attention. He's still conscious, so talk to him. Keep encouraging him to breathe calmly." The man's eyelids fluttered but did not open. His breathing remained shallow. Sophia spoke to him, softly but insistently. "Sir, you're going to be okay. Help is coming. Stay with me." At that moment, the event coordinator stepped forward, breathless and apologetic. I'm sorry, I didn't expect this to happen here. Thank you for taking charge." Sophia shook her head briefly. "Stay with the crowd. Let's keep the space open. No one move closer, please." The coordinator nodded, then turned to redirect some onlookers leaning in too closely, threatening to disturb the man. Around the room, whispers transformed. Where there had been mocking glances, there now flickered admiration, the kind that seeped slowly from surprise. A silver-haired collector caught Sophia's eye and nodded briefly, a small silent acknowledgement of her competence. Minutes passed with slow, tense breaths. The distant sound of sirens sharpened everyone's awareness. Sophia checked the man's pulse again, still shallow but steady. The paramedics burst through the main door, hurried but professional, their expressions serious as they assessed the situation in seconds. Sophia quickly relayed everything she had observed. He collapsed from heatstroke, shallow breathing, and weak pulse. We elevated his legs and kept his head tilted back. We wetted his forehead to cool him. He's still responsive but struggling. One paramedic bowed her head slightly in thanks. "Excellent work. You've stabilized him well." Watching the experts take over, Sophia stepped back into the shadows, allowing them to work. The man's eyelids opened weakly, and a sigh of relief whispered through the gathered guests. The auction, interrupted and subdued, awaited news. Conversations were hushed but filled now with respect for the quiet figure who had saved a life. Gone were the mocking whispers, replaced by wide-eyed stares and tentative applause whispered among tight rings of collectors. Sophia returned to the coat rack, her hands folded calmly in front of her. The room, filled with crystal chandeliers and rare artworks, had momentarily forgotten itself in the face of crisis, and in that brief moment, the modest coat attendant became the essential heart of the event. She allowed herself a small, fleeting smile. The patrons who had dismissed her mere moments ago could no longer ignore the woman who had saved one of their own. The bright lights of the gallery faded softly from Sophia's mind as images from her past rose unbidden, filling the spaces between her thoughts. The woman who had steered a crowded room from panic to order was not always the quiet coat attendant blending into unremarkable backgrounds. Years ago, she had been someone else entirely, a trained EMT, respected and trusted, a steady hand in emergency rooms where the stakes were heartbreakingly human. She was younger then, not yet a mother, with a quicksilver determination and a medical bag always close at hand. Scenes replayed in her mind, the wail of sirens breaking night's silence, the cold, antiseptic smell of hospital corridors, the soft stink of blood mingling with cleaning solvents. She knelt beside the mangled passenger of a car wreck, fingers skillfully pressing to staunch bleeding, voice low but firm. The patient's panicked eyes met hers, and she offered a calm promise in that glance: "You will survive." Another memory surfaced sharp and sudden, the moment she climbed into an ambulance, attending to a choking child in a crowded playground. Her hands deftly cleared the airway, the child's tears turned to relieved laughter. She was the reassuring presence, the quiet hero. Sophia recalled the beeping monitors, the controlled chaos of trauma bays, the camaraderie with paramedics and doctors. She was in her element, the woman with the knowledge, the skill to save lives. But then the light dimmed. Her gaze drifted to a faded photograph tucked away in a drawer, the smiling face of her late husband. He had been an EMT too. Night shifts together, shared dreams for their daughter, a fragile future they'd built between emergency calls. Then the accident, a call gone wrong, a sudden silence cutting through the promise of their life. The grief was a tidal wave that swept away Sophia's strength. She withdrew into herself, unable to face the frantic urgency that had once energized her. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months where she drifted, unmoored. Even the hospital halls felt like haunted catacombs. She resigned, hoping distance from the pain might soften her loss. Financial reality pressed in, the need to care for her daughter alone, the cost of rent and school, the weight of bills. The EMT uniform, so tightly intertwined with memories both sacred and painful, was folded away. Sophia took on simple jobs that offered stability without emotional demands: a cleaner at art exhibits, a coat attendant at high society events, a silent observer in worlds so far from her past life. Each evening she returned to their small apartment, tired but diligent, watching her daughter sleep, the steady heartbeat of a love that anchored her. Yet inside, a quiet voice whispered, a restless ember of the woman she once was, waiting. She had not forgotten. Skills honed through years of training remained beneath the surface, ready but uncalled upon. She kept her knowledge tucked away, as invisible as her uniform in the glittering halls where she moved unnoticed. Today's crisis had awakened something dormant. As she bent over the collapsed man, issuing calm commands with practiced ease, she had not hesitated. The reflexes came naturally, checking pulse and breathing, assessing symptoms, taking control. Her past was no longer a weight, slowly it seemed more like a shield. Yet memories of loss and resilience shadowed every action. She was a woman who had been both healer and mourner, carrying her grief in silence while protecting others with strength they could not see. In quiet moments alone, she sometimes allowed herself to wonder if the world might one day see her differently, not as the invisible attendant but as the woman she had been and could be again. But until that day, she moved among the lofty gatherings like a shadow, guarding her story behind soft eyes and a steady smile. For now, she was here, a silent guardian in the fine black coat. And tomorrow, who knew? Perhaps the past would find a way back. The auction hall was gradually returning to its usual hum of polite conversation and clinking glasses, but the atmosphere had palpably shifted. Rumors and praise for the quiet coat attendant who had saved the man's life circulated swiftly among the guests. The event was no longer just a spectacle of rare art and wealthy bidders, it had become a shared memory of crisis and unexpected heroism. Sophia continued her work carefully, but the glances she now received carried something new, recognition mingled with respect, a softness in eyes that had moments before dismissed her. A tall, well-dressed woman approached hesitantly. "Excuse me," she said with a sincere smile. "I just wanted to thank you for what you did tonight. You were incredible." Sophia nodded quietly, feeling a warmth rising that was unfamiliar under these chandeliers. "Thank you," she said simply. Another guest, a silver-haired gentleman with sharp features, caught her attention from across the room. He walked over, pausing for a moment to regard her with steady eyes. "Miss," he said formally, "your calm made all the difference. You saved a life this evening. I can't thank you enough." Sophia's heart quickened, but she maintained composure. "I was just doing what needed to be done." But whispers had moved beyond the walls of the gallery. Minutes after the incident, a guest with a smartphone had started recording, capturing Sophia's composed demeanor amid the crowd's confusion. The video surfaced almost immediately on social media platforms, shared widely under hashtags praising the life-saving code attendant. The clip showed Sophia issuing clear instructions, tending to the collapsed man's cooling forehead, and managing bystanders with gentle authority. Comments flooded in, lauding her skill and calmness, many expressing astonishment that such competence had been found in someone so unassuming. Local news outlets caught wind of the story. A soft-spoken reporter interviewed a visibly moved guest outside the gallery. "It was terrifying to watch one of the most important collectors suddenly collapse," she said, tears glistening. "But the woman in the black uniform, she didn't hesitate. She took charge with such grace. Without her, things could have been much worse." Sophia never sought the spotlight, but as her colleagues began to acknowledge her in ways they never had before, she couldn't help but feel the walls she had carefully built around herself beginning to crack. The courtroom staff, once indifferent, now greeted her warmly. "You really saved the day," said a young man who earlier had barely said a word to her. Even the gallery management sent a quiet but distinct message of gratitude, with the event coordinator dropping a note of thanks personally to the courtroom. "Your quick thinking was exemplary. You handled everything perfectly." Sophia tucked the note into her pocket, a small but meaningful token. As the day wore on, discussions among guests expanded beyond art and prestige to Sophia's story. An online article went into detail about her background, which a quick search revealed: a once respected EMT whose medical career had paused abruptly due to personal tragedy. Old photographs surfaced, showing a confident, professional woman in uniform, awarded by her department for bravery and dedication. The duality of her life, a skilled medic turned code attendant, fascinated many. Comments online applauded her humility and strength, many expressing hope that she might return to the profession she had quietly stepped away from. Back at the gallery, Sophia noticed the changes ripple through her everyday world. Where before people had ignored her presence, now there were smiles, polite inquiries about her well-being, and casual conversations peppered with gratitude. She caught sight of the rich tapestry of human reactions, some guests offering subtle bows of respect, others shaking their heads in amazement that someone so modest could possess such exceptional skill. It was as if an invisible veil had lifted, revealing the woman beneath the simple black coat. Yet, beneath this new light, Sophia felt a quiet unease. The heroism drawn from years of experience and pain was still part of her, but so was the vulnerability she guarded zealously. Would they accept all of her story, or only the shining moments? She watched as a group of younger gallery staff, previously distant, now approached her with genuine warmth, asking questions about her past work, her daughter, and hopes. The walls she had built to protect herself were softening. Over the next few days, the story spread beyond the city. Social media continued to share and reshare the videos and articles, painting a picture of resilience wrapped in humility. For Sophia, it was not a sudden transformation but a gradual awakening, the realization that she was more than the quiet attendant overlooked in the crowd. She was not invisible anymore. And as she folded coats and greeted guests with a newfound serenity, the thought took root that maybe, just maybe, she could reclaim the life and purpose she had set aside. The community that once ignored her had come to see her as something more, a woman who had quietly saved a life, and perhaps, in doing so, had saved herself as well. Days passed in a blur of normalcy tinged with newfound attention. Sophia returned to the gallery coat room, where conversations and glances still carried an edge of admiration. Yet beneath the quiet gratitude lay an undercurrent of uncertainty, questions she hadn't fully faced about what her future might hold. Then, one crisp morning shortly after the event, her phone rang sharply, breaking the usual calm of her modest apartment. She glanced at the screen, an unfamiliar number from the city's emergency medical services office. With hesitant fingers, she answered. "Hello, Sophia. This is Mark Reynolds, director of the EMS training division," said a steady male voice. "We were made aware of your actions at the auction and the video that circulated. I wanted to reach out personally to extend an invitation." Sophia's heart quickened. "An invitation?" "Yes. To join our paramedic recertification program tailored for experienced professionals returning to active service. We believe someone with your skill set and composure would be an invaluable asset to the team." Her breath caught. The old ache stirred, the fear, the hesitation from the past trauma. She swallowed hard. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Reynolds, but I'm not sure I'm ready to return." "There's no pressure," Mark replied kindly. "We'd be honored to have you, but it has to be the right decision for you. Your example already inspires many." After hanging up, Sophia sat silently, the weight of possibility pressing down. The familiar turmoil rose, memories of loss, the driving exhaustion of balancing grief and single motherhood, the years she had buried beneath simpler daily rhythms. In the quiet of her apartment, she looked at the photograph of her daughter on the dresser. Her child's small handprints pressed to glass, her bright eyes full of trust and hope. That hope rekindled a spark deep within Sophia, a courage tempered by love. She called Mark back within the hour. "Tell me more." Over the coming weeks, Sophia immersed herself in the recertification program. The training center was a flurry of rigorous drills, lectures, and hands-on practice. Surrounded by old colleagues and new faces, she found muscles she hadn't used along with a sharpness of mind that never really left her. The challenges were real: physical stamina tests, rapid decision-making drills, simulated emergencies designed to push her to her limits. But beneath the tension, a profound sense of belonging grew, as if the years of silence had been a cocoon waiting to unfold. At night, in her small apartment, she balanced rest with school projects and bedtime stories. The world of emergency response and motherhood swirled together, a complex, beautiful dance she was relearning with fierce determination. Sophia's colleagues, some of whom had heard of her story, welcomed her warmly, offering support and encouragement. A seasoned instructor commented, "It takes strength to come back. Not many can do what you're doing." One afternoon, after successfully completing a particularly grueling practical exam, Sophia stood before the training center's entrance. She smoothed her crisp new uniform, its badge gleaming, a symbol of renewal and resilience. Her reflection in the glass was steady eyes and determined smile. No longer the invisible code attendant overshadowed by high society's glittering guests, she was reclaiming her place in the world she had once loved, and in the heart of her own story. Later, when Sophia returned home, her daughter ran into her arms without hesitation. The embrace was warm and full, a seal of unconditional love that rebuilt her confidence in quiet but powerful ways. As days turned into weeks, Sophia found balance blossoming in the storm. She excelled in training and grew hopeful about returning to the field. More than that, she felt a deeper sense of peace, a woman no longer hiding, no longer afraid of confronting her past. Her simple black coat was gone, replaced by the sharp uniform of a paramedic in training. She moved forward carrying scars and strengths alike, ready to face whatever came next. The life-saving code attendant was no longer invisible. Sophia had stepped into the light, embodying the courage to heal others, and herself.